Recording in progress.
Hey, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Scio Environmental Task Force meeting of December 1st, 2022. And, oops, we have Chris. Excellent. All right, so our agenda, is there anything anyone wants to add to or change in the agenda? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as posted.
So moved.
And support? Support from Bob Hyde. All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Okay. The communication correspondence, we did get a copy of, I gave you the link to the final resilient Washtenaw plan. That should, I think it still needs a second reading and approval. So that is on track to be approved by, before the end of the year. The other piece that I think I emailed it out or attached it is last night, the Ann Arbor Public Schools school board saw their environmental sustainability framework for the first time. And that is posted on the AAPS website. I will also, I'll send out a link because it was just posted today, I think. And there's a 2-week period for public comment on that. It's a significant plan, and they're taking, it includes curriculum as well as operations and so forth. They did not set a goal for scope 3 emissions, carbon neutrality for scope 3, but they did set goals for their scope 1 and scope 2 emissions. So I think in their scope 2, which is your electricity power purchase, is 2024, because that's when 100% of their renewable will be my green power. So, and then I think it was 2035 for scope 2 emissions. So that would be all of their buildings, and they currently have, I think, 2 schools that are being designed all electric. So
you did attach that document when you sent to the email with the agenda. It was there too.
All right, great. I guess it probably didn't get uploaded to the website. I'm not sure if that was the last one that the task force had. I'm not sure if that one matches the one precisely that's that got posted, because I know they were still, Emil was still getting feedback from folks with that one. So what I wanted, and the reason why I think I wanted people to take a look at those is we need to, kind of finalize the format for our framework, our plan, whatever we're going to do. And the public schools format was very different than, the Washtenaw County format. And it had an appendix with a lot of resources in it that the task force had done and so forth. So there were some good things I thought about it. And, the county plan is just, some of those slides are just really dense. And, you could probably take an hour to view, some of those, some of the compactness of those slides. So in any event, so that's sort of one item to have some discussion about. And then I sort of wanted to get people's thoughts on the November 14th meeting and some of the feedback we got, and, how we want to kind of take in some of those comments and so forth.
Well, I enjoyed hearing all the presentations. There's a lot of good material there. For me, I did take a couple of notes on takeaways, and of course, I don't have those notes in front of me at the moment. But I think overall, if we can just come up with, say, 2 or 3 initiatives that came out of those presentations, then we'll be doing very well for ourselves as a task force. I just want to make one more comment too on the survey. There's a lot of information in that survey. And man, our students went to a lot of work to compile all of that and present it. I did sort of get the feeling while I was watching all of that and trying to absorb all of that, that it was a lot to absorb in a very short time. And to me, it lacked just a little bit of focus. I'd like to see it taken to the next level. What was there was fine, but I'd really like to see this taken to the next level. What can we do with this data to drive some good initiatives forward? And I'm not sure I came away with any sound conclusions on that.
Yeah, and did you go into the actual drive that has all the background data on it?
No, I haven't gone there.
Yeah, that's the one that's really helpful. And because they, all of the interview, the presentation summarized the survey results, but then there's all of the interviews, which I think are, those have some qualitative kind of information. Yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe that can be tapped. It would be good if the students or another group or somebody took that on and said, okay, now we need a summary of the summary and say, based on the data we've got and tapping into some of the more detailed information, what do we do next?
Can I jump in?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I'm one of the students. We do have a full survey report and there's a full interview report. And we purposefully formatted those reports in ways that would be useful to each working group. It's not our place, however, to tell you what to do with that, because our role is to share with you what the community had to say, what the key interest groups had to say. And we don't hold a stake in this stuff like you all do, so what you decide to take from that data, unfortunately, has to be up to you all, because that's just not our place to do that. It's not our place to make decisions about which information is more important than other information. So I would say that I would not recommend that you have students do that. I would recommend that folks on the task force take that on, or perhaps other leaders or members of the township, because it's just not up to us to make decisions about the township and what y'all should do.
I don't disagree with that. In fact, this is not in any way a criticism of the work you guys did. It's fabulous. I'm just pointing out, I think there's a need to use it now.
I'm wondering if each of the working groups, as a part of sort of our next step as we're figuring out the format, is to pull from that what they see as the most important information to support their, the goals and strategies that they think are most important. And that would also support the all the aspects of the plan moving forward. And
right.
I think the other thing that is important to realize is there may be some things that we think are very important that people don't feel have that same kind of priority. That could also mean that we have some educating to do. It doesn't, just because people haven't done it or don't think it's, as important, if it's a way of rapidly reducing greenhouse gas emissions, it's up to us to look at that and say, no, we think this is important, but the community isn't there yet. How do we bridge that gap? That kind of thing.
Right.
Go ahead, Jane.
Jan, I would reinforce some of that. I appreciate your perspective, Anna, and I want to step back and remind all of us, kind of big picture here. The groups went to work, came up with some preliminary goals, and in parallel, the students went to work and did this phenomenal community input. The absolute intent is exactly what Jan just said. For the teams to take their preliminary goals, now look at them through the filter of this survey data. And I appreciate what Jan just said. There's two questions. How does this survey data inform the primary goals and initiatives? And I also hear Jeff's voice, priorities. How does this inform where we really bring our focus, right? So it's like a final report almost coming from each of the teams with this data now part of it. But then I appreciate the second question, which Jan is prompting. What does this data tell us about how we need to be working with the community? Now, if we're fortunate and we get a second team of students, this is the work they would be doing. How do we now engage the community to move forward? Both on an education front and also an action front. But I really do want us to notice we're at a critical pivot. Students did a great job. Now it comes back. How do we wrap this up? And again, at the risk of repeating myself, I really do hear Jeff's point that we have to distill this into something that's doable. 2023, these actions, and maybe there's a sequencing or something, but we can't eat the whole elephant at once. Mm-hmm. Just to wrap this up, the other key player in this, I think now, Jan, is becoming the Planning Commission, especially as we see what's beginning to play out in Ann Arbor. The Planning Commission has a really critical role to look hard on its role in its toolbox and what it can be doing in parallel with these working groups.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And I also think, which I thought was very good, some of Jessica's comments during the Planning Commission group, which was when you look at capacity of the township, we really do have more capacity for policies and ordinances than we do for, some of the other work, especially some of the community outreach. And so that's really fitting. And I fingers crossed with the C's team, but there may be some other options that we have, like interns and so forth, to help with the community engagement. It's really interesting that I was starting to look at not only our planning, our zoning ordinances, but there are some other policies and so forth that the township could start. And one of the things that's interesting about this is if you start with some of the policies and the ordinances, like I didn't even know we had an affordable housing policy, which includes, some tax abatements and that kind of stuff. But if you start with those transcend elected officials, administrations, et cetera. So that sort of policy making really makes it can, affect the operating of the township actually very quickly. So and so I think there's a lot of, I'm just thinking, with from the Planning Commission standpoint, we can require all of these developments to provide recycling. That can be part of an ordinance within the township that, all areas have to do recycling. Just because we don't have the capacity right now necessarily maybe for composting, but that could follow. So, some of those things you can codify, and they have to happen. So, and it doesn't necessarily, if the burden's on the the multifamily and so forth, they have to design for room. So if later on they can't say, well, we don't have any place to put it. But that's just one simple kind of thing. But the whole idea of, with the power, there could be a policy that, all of the power for all township, the entire township needs to be renewable. That could be a policy. And right now it wouldn't cost them anything more to do that. So those are the kinds of things that I think, probably are kind of almost like the low hanging fruit. And then as people see us talking and operating in a different way, then, it'll take a little bit longer to do, some of the land planning things and developing the community solar, doing the, compost sites and so forth. Those are a little, transforming, where the density of the housing is. All of those are, longer term things. But I think there are some probably every working group probably has some codification piece that can be upfront. It could even be, I'm trying to figure out how to do a suite of sustainability ordinances within the planning commission realm so that they come in as a whole and people can look at them holistically and what we're trying to do and why we're trying to do it, rather than kind of a piecemeal of add EV charging, increase our canopy kind of thing, so forth. So that's kind of what I'm thinking from a,
I wonder if
standpoint.
there's a last step. You've been involved with the transportation. I'm thinking about that one and all the really good work Chris and Kathy have done. I wonder, Jan, I think what came into that meeting with the BOT and other township reps was the integration of the survey data into the recommendations. Kathy, we worked hard on that.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if the piece, we got to get this down, like somebody said, to something digestible. It doesn't have to be final, locked and loaded, but it's got to be something that's more digestible than it probably is right now. And maybe the last sort of filter to push this through is a time frame. What is the low-hanging fruit we could act on now? What's possible in the midterm, defined as 2 to 3 years?
Mm-hmm.
What's a longer term that's going to be in the 5-year plus time frame? And then if we did that, then say, in partnership with the Planning Commission, what needs to happen? In partnership with the BOT, what needs to happen? To begin to try to get a sense of some responsibility and where a lead might be on different things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's really good, Jane. Early wins, right? Make progress, make those early, significant early wins, midterm, and then the ones that we know are going to take a while. Yeah. I think that's a good plan.
And then in terms of the partners, I think I think the Planning Commission kind of rises to the top because they've got probably the best toolkit. But then LPC, TAP, Parks, Parks has a big role in canopy but then I would also say, where are the opportunities for a alliance, a partnership with Ann Arbor? For example, Solarize was a great example. They had the whole thing developed. We just piloted it out here. Mm-hmm. Where are there alliances in Ann Arbor? But then also, where are there alliances in the state of Michigan? Because Michigan's getting serious, right? And well, the county I missed. So probably Ann Arbor, the county, the state.
Right.
Where are some key areas of partnership where we can leverage some resources, some programming, et cetera?
Yeah. And I think the other, like, kind of an early win can also be there are going to be a lot of, I think there's going to be a lot of data coming down on, funding, and this is, I'm just thinking of the individual single family, okay, the residential kind of piece. You talked about Solarize, if we really do need a Solarize champion to, help contact the HOAs and that kind of thing. And we might be able to find somebody that would do that, and just connect, the HOAs and individuals that are interested in that. The other thing that the 2030 district is partnering with Solarize with is for commercial Solarize. So we have an RFP, and actually I used the fire station to kind of work through an RFP template for the commercial Solarize. So I think if we can pull together some resources and, yeah. And I think key too is going to be how the township does their communications moving forward, and to really push for, if we push for anything, it's, the capacity to bolster our communications, which I forgot to put on the agenda, but I got confirmation that there is going to be a winter newsletter, and we have an opportunity to write, an article in it. They wanted to do a little article on the lighting updates that they did, and any other kind of progress that we'd like to highlight, in that it's not like we get the whole thing. But with that, I also said that we had been discussing having a spring newsletter designated for sustainability and what we are planning. And there was an openness to that. No one said no, and no one said yes, but there was an openness to that, especially if we have, if we've gone through the approval process with the plan. So I think that's helpful. So we approved the agenda, and I already have something to add to it. But I think it would be good to figure out what we wanted to do. For sure, we could do a QR code to the presentation and the recording, as well as a little kind of synopsis of where we are and where we're going. Any other thoughts on that? What do you think would be most helpful and for folks? And public, we don't have a large group today, so if you want to, participate in our discussion, why don't we just do that rather than public comment? Since you guys come to all the meetings anyway.
I'm fine. I do have a public comment. I'll leave it for the end. But I'm listening, I'm paying attention, and but I don't have any comments so far on the topics. Thank you.
Okay, that's fine. How about you, Rob?
He might be working on something.
Okay.
So if he doesn't answer, that's why.
Okay. It's called multitasking. Yeah. Okay.
I'm on the treadmill. Yes. So.
All right. Okay, so Jane, who wants to help? I think it'd be helpful if we had just a few people working on finalizing kind of the format we're thinking of, and what the components would be, because I think that will help people, as we move, into the sort of writing phase, if you will, of the plan. And so I'm just thinking, are there a couple people that, can can spare another meeting and try and get this done so we can get a suggested, and I don't know if it has to be a formal format or just all the key components that we want each group to have. We talked about, why a certain segment is important, the basic goals and strategies and actions, and, sort of which actions are, near term, midterm,
right.
long-term.
So Jan, I think we need to keep this decentralized with the teams. And I think there's one last effort on the team's part. And again, I'm modeling this off the good work Kathy, Chris, the transportation team has done.
Mm-hmm.
There is a list of initiatives. I think that ought to go into an Excel. I think it ought to have 2 or 3 columns to the right. The first column ought to be time frame. Is it near term, low hanging fruit? Is it midterm, defined as 2 to 3 years? Let's say 1 to 3 years. And is it long term, 3 years or more? I wouldn't go much longer than 3 years because we haven't really got the time, right? So I would put the 3 time frames. And then in the next column, I would say, and then maybe orient the list, resort the list by the time priorities, right? So you see the low hanging fruit, you see the midterm, you see the longer term. Then in the next column, I would suggest we put critical lead partner. And maybe there's even another column for a node. It's going to show the planning commission. It's going to show TAP. It's going to show LPC. It's going to show parks. It's hopefully going to show township utilities. We have to figure out where a natural lead is going to exist for some of this stuff. Mm-hmm. And then I think if we can and that's just mechanics and admin. That's not a lot more work for each of the groups to sort of distill it into that kind of Excel. Then I think is probably the time 2 or 3 of us need to come together, distill that, and go to and Jeff, this I hear your voice in this. The BOT has to approve something tangible, actionable, and it's got to put the people and the resources in place to make it happen. So I think we need to package up something that can go from the Planning Commission to the BOT for an approval, right? And Jan, you and I talked about this some number of weeks ago. It would include a permanent sustainability task force. It would include some budgeting. It would include a plan for staffing. Right.
Yeah. And I also think there's, some discussion. I've been thinking about this, Jane, too, I'm sorry, Kathy, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I was looking earlier today at the Ann Arbor Public Schools format, and I was also looking at the counties. And I also actually went and looked at Royal Oaks because Royal Oak did one in, I want to say, early summer, late spring. And they have a beautiful one, but it's obviously very expensively done and very nicely packaged and slick. But they have all the things that Jane was talking about with the categories. Both Royal Oak does and the county does. The county has got the format, the format that they have for each of the particular goals, how they had 10 for transportation, for example. Mm-hmm. They had a heading. They explained what it was. They explained what of the other lenses it hit upon. They categorized if it was long-term, midterm, or short-term, how expensive it was, how difficult it was, so you could kind of see right away, this is low-hanging fruit that we should hit right away. This is something we should try and get a few things under our belt first. And I thought it was a pretty good format that way. And I thought it was nicely done. And then I was thinking about the discussion that we had with the county when they were getting feedback from us. And we had asked them, and they seemed amenable to the idea of being kind of a clearinghouse, bringing ideas together, connecting everybody. I'm wondering if they'd be willing to even just share the format with us in the end, so we just kind of fill in the blanks to some degree. and then other townships can maybe use the same thing as other townships do this. And I just thought I would bring that up as a possibility to think about.
Interesting. It doesn't hurt to ask.
Right.
And we can, if they would, share just a blank slide like they had.
Open source everything if you can,
I will ask Andrew.
Well, now while I'm thinking about it, I understand the importance of bringing in other township organizations and even reaching out at the county level to bring partners on board and leverage what they're already doing and the strengths that they have.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a list of resources available? I mean, I'm sure I can find a list of township organizations and committees on the website. But there are other things too. I mean, there are county organizations we might want to work with on certain things. I wonder, is there any kind of centralized resource that we can tap for that?
That's a really interesting thing, because I keep finding new pots of people doing things. But I think we could at least begin that. We know who's doing rain garden stuff, and we know who's doing, can provide native plant services and so forth. I think if we start at least the resource piece, then people can add to it. But I don't know of any, specific clearinghouse like that. Yeah.
Perhaps our website or the township's website could start a page where we could keep adding to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we do need to update, we'll probably do that when we have I think it would be probably a good idea to make sure we post that presentation on the website as, kind of current progress or something. So it's, not buried in the, recordings and so forth. I'll see if I can get someone to do that. Just do a little update before, by January. And also, okay, I will ask Andrew if they would share that kind of slide format with us in that. And I think what's important too, though, is to think about, the county has and I think, we can just say, okay, the county's going to help us do this, but, and really kind of narrow in on what Scio can do. Because some of these things, I think we have to rely on the county for. Yeah.
Their goals, when they list their goals, many of them have, I don't remember what the term they use, but essentially townships, municipalities within the county are going to be their lead partners, and others don't. So you can kind of just go through and see, these are the things they expect Scio to be working on at the county level, at least. And it covers most of what we're doing, at least in transportation, but not all of it. So
yeah. And it definitely, I think it definitely covers a lot of what we're planning on doing. It, and Jeff, just like I'm thinking about, the composting, the both centralized and decentralized, composting thing is, it's sort of like the resilience centers, county, where are we going to have these composting things? How are we going to do composting, countywide? And it's something that, they're in a better position to work where we can do, as Scio, do our part, right? We're probably not going to do a major composting area, but, the larger ones and then, neighborhoods and so forth.
I would agree with that, especially starting out. But that's also what the ILSR class is pointing out, that there's a great benefit from starting small and local, because it means that the generated compost will travel less distance and is more likely to be used in your area. So there's no need to jump into a big commercial composting facility. In fact, starting out is probably not your ideal thing to do.
It makes sense. Okay, so I will, I will ask Andrew for that open source slide and make it an open source slide, right? And then that will help us, because we can write our own, beginning executive summary and that kind of stuff. But it's really the plan data that you kind of finish up first, right? And each of the groups then would have a format. Or if people even gave us the data they wanted to put on the slides, and we may need to tweak some of the slide language slightly, what it covers. I don't know. What do you think, Jane?
Well, okay. So the thought going through my mind is, I think it's important to keep this decentralized with the working teams. There's not staff for this. At this point, they are the experts on what they've developed in their various areas. I think there's also an opportunity to keep it simple. Kathy, I hear the suggestion about the county format, and all of that might be real value add, but I'd want us to sort of evaluate it all and bias ourselves toward kind of a keep it simple. I don't think this is going to be rocket science. I think once we do the time frame near mid long, once you think about some key partners and where the lead for this might be, I think maybe we just start with that. And my gut feel, Jan, is it's probably going to be an Excel document. I'm also thinking about Ann Arbor and one of the first generations of its climate action plan. And it had like so many actions, you couldn't get your head around it, right? And it became overwhelming. And some of these more recent plans are much more sophisticated. They go through a strategy, a principles filter. We can't end up with a laundry list of 60 actions. It's going to be overwhelming. So we really have to distill this down to some essential action, really focus on some early successes with some near term. Kathy, I don't know when the transportation meets. I think the groups ought to be working in parallel to just reformat and add these at least 2 extra columns of information and a few more if we think there's real value add.
Yeah, so collaborating partners.
I'd hesitate to centralize it. I just make this last point, Jen. I'd hesitate to centralize it to 1 or 2 people because the expertise is with the working groups right now.
I don't think I'm sorry. I didn't mean for them to write it. I meant for them to come up with the format so that the working groups would put their information in the same format, and not, I don't know if there's anyone here from the Natural Features group, but they have essays written right now. I mean, it's just, a really, really, word dense kind of thing. And so what I'm searching for is, how to, we have more information than we could possibly, put out, but somehow I want to preserve, all of the research people have done, but what really goes out for approval is this, a simplified format. And I think, what the core elements, Jane, that you were talking about, the 3 time periods, and then I think the leadership within the township, who's kind of the taking responsibility for this, and then the collaborators. And people may not know who they think should be, take on the leadership. And this, I think that's an important discussion to have with, some trustees and so forth. Because my concern is the more we add this, and this to the township, it has to integrate somewhere.
Can I quickly share something from the Royal Oak plan, just so you can see what it looks like? Okay,
Here, hang on. Let me make sure you can.
And I'm not sure I can do this, but
Kathy, I know the woman who led that, Julie Lyons Bricker. Yes,
I'm from Royal Oak originally.
Job pulling that together.
Yeah, long time ago. So she did. It looks really great. Let's see. How do I do the share thing? Is this share screen?
Mm-hmm.
And I want to show what? Desktop, I guess.
It would be the window that has your file in it that you want to show.
Okay, so that's this.
Yeah, you have to select what you want to share and then hit a share button, usually in the lower right-hand corner.
Okay, let's see. And I somehow missed that. I think it didn't come up, did it?
No.
Okay, let me try again here. One more time, and I won't waste your time if I can't do that. Let's see. I have basic, or do I need advanced? No, I need basic.
So Kathy, at the bottom of my screen, I see a green icon that says share screen.
I got that. And then I get a thing that says desktop 1, whiteboard, and iPhone things.
Huh.
Google Chrome unknown.
Do you have the Royal Oak open?
I do. I don't. I mean, it's.
Does it come up when
on
you?
a tab. It's on a tab.
Okay.
So, but it's not. But you're not seeing it. So.
But do you see it when you do your shares? When you say when you hit the share screen?
No.
It doesn't come up.
Let's see what's.
Kathy, if you just share the link in the chat, Jan can share it from her screen.
Good point. Let me do that. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm pulling it up
Thanks,
also,
Chris.
Kathy.
Good point.
Jan, I just pulled it up. I'll try to share my screen.
Okay.
Okay. It's on page 50. Go to page 52 of the plan if you get it up.
I'm not seeing it among all my files either. Interesting. Basic. Oh, and I see where you were.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. It's interesting. Jan, I did a quick search. Royal Oak Climate Action Plan. It popped right up. It's going to be fastest if you do this. I'm in the same do loop Kathy is.
Oh, that's interesting.
I'm only seeing my Word files versus my full desktop.
So he's in chat.
You said it was what page?
52, I believe. That's the mobility one, just so you can see the format.
Okay.
You got it? You have it there? I don't see it.
It's opening.
Okay.
Now let's see if I can.
I think what I'm thinking is this looks a lot like what Jane was describing. I don't know if necessarily the columns on the table are, but.
And you said, I'm sorry, what page again?
Try 52.
Try 52. Oh, okay. I see. Yeah, how they.
Mobility thing.
Mm-hmm.
So. Share that.
Let's just see. Yep. Okay.
Okay, so and you can see, I can see it now. Yes, you can see they've got the goals over here.
Oh yeah.
And then they have the initial cost. Is this? There's a key at the bottom. If you scroll down a page or two, there's a key saying what the dollar means and what those all letters mean. At the bottom of the mobility thing. So Now they have a lot of goals, as you can see.
Right there,
There's
the legend. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you can see they have them broken up according to initial costs, so you can see how expensive something is, whether it's capital improvement or capital projects with return on investment. They have whether or not it does anything to directly impact greenhouse gas emissions and which other values they hit upon.
Yeah, this is good.
Is that the kind of thing you had in mind?
Yeah.
But I mean, to me, as a task force, if we had some kind of format like this given to us, we've decided that we're going to do something roughly like this, we'd know what information to put in, and then we could polish it up later to make it uniform. But it would be nice to know what specific information we needed about each thing.
Yeah. This is good, Kathy.
Mm-hmm. And I think the only thing that it's missing, which you brought up, Jane, is sort of the near term,
right.
Early win,
right,
midterm and long term.
Although if you go up above all of this, you can see they have, look at this. They have what they've already. This is where they are. Current state of mobility in Royal Oak, and then there's a lot of other stuff in here too. It's very well done, but as you can see, it's also a big glossy production. So,
it's bad though. It's, I mean, from, so each working group could really do, okay, the current state of X, and then go into, these are the main strategy and then the actions. And this could be pretty easy to format. We don't have to do anything really extraordinary. It is basically an Excel kind of format.
Right.
Would it hurt to share this with the board and ask if this is sufficient for them to make decisions on these different proposals? Or if they would want to see additional information, just get their opinion before we put all this work into it?
Yeah, what would be most helpful? I think we might also have a little difficult time trying to figure out relative cost, but we might be able to get some indication, for things similar things that we want to do that the county's doing. They had some, cost parameters in that. Also, that's where we don't really have as much of the cost expertise, but
I really like Chris's idea about there ought to be a conversation with the supervisor, with the township administrator to bounce some ideas around. And I think we ought to keep it simple. I think it's all about simple right now. Get the recommendations into this format. And I'm willing to acknowledge maybe there's 4 columns off to the right, but I think there's only 2 to start with for the sake of, I would suggest we get near term, midterm, long term filled in, because we can make a good judgment call about that. I think we can also make a good judgment call about where the lead for this might be, where the partners are. But then I would have 2 columns kind of to be filled in. To Chris's point, don't go through the effort yet because we don't have that knowledge. And one is, what is the greenhouse gas impact reduction? Does it have a high, medium, low? And again, how do we quantify that? But also then I think a 4th column is both an estimated cost, but a funding. For some things, the funding source will be known, or it could be anticipated. But for the sake of moving this forward, Jan, I would suggest we put the 4 columns into the format, but only ask the groups to do the first 2 because they have that knowledge. And then you've got enough meat on the bones for a few of us to sit down with the supervisor, the administrator, and just to bounce around. How do we move this forward? Looking at Will's email back to the team, he had a lot of really keen insights about the plan, the feedback, the community input. Clearly, folks are thinking about this. So I think Chris is spot on. Let's get this thing framed out, fill in just the 2 columns, and then pick the 3 or 4 folks most knowledgeable and just get a meeting set up with, again, I think probably the supervisor and the administrator.
That makes sense. So I think I'm trying to think of, is everyone okay with doing that in an Excel? Is that okay? Is that accessible to everybody?
Yeah.
Excel.
I'm just going to ask about that. Are you going to send are you going to put one on Google Drive and use Sheets and then the groups fill in that one?
Yeah, I think I'll put up a
copy.
template and then put the template in the Google Drive, but also send it out because I think everybody's going to complete their own and then we can merge.
Okay, yeah.
It's easy enough to merge them. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, because some people like to work in the Drive, some people don't like to, and everybody's going to be working on their own piece. So as long as it's the same template. So I will get that done this weekend. Jane and Kathy, I'll kind of run it by you guys. Is that okay?
Yeah.
And then we can, I found the 2030 district has a whole icon library that I just found the other day, and I'm going, hey, we can use these. So I think we'll have some fun icons, graphic icons anyway. So, but I think that's good. And Kathy, I think I want to do the current status because I think that somehow capturing what Scio's done in these areas is important too. So, because that gives people, it's not like we haven't worked on some of these things. Yeah. And I think I'm going to encourage actually I wanted to ask you guys about this. It adds some pages, but did you notice how the food system folks and the natural ecosystem folks divided their work into 3 categories, which I thought were pretty important. There was the natural ecosystems, there was the water, and then there was the local food systems and agriculture and local food systems. And I'm sort of thinking that those are each pretty big hunks of things, and transportation. You guys might want to take housing, and I hate to just hand transportation housing, but I'm almost thinking we need to take housing out a little bit, and maybe it gets around land use, and transportation is key to, land use and density, and all those things are sort of all interrelated. I'm struggling with that a little bit because it doesn't just belong in transportation. You know what I mean?
I was wondering about, currently, are we thinking of it as part of building? Because I had been, but I don't know.
Yeah, because it overlaps, right?
It overlaps. Like if we do go the direction eventually of like not allowing gas hookups and things like that, would be under buildings. Okay.
Yeah. It's kind of a little broader with land use. I'll think about that a little bit more. I mean, as long as, we have some of those housing goals about increasing density along public transit corridors and so forth. And I think that would be interesting. Bob, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I was going to say, this sounds a lot like what Jeff Jackson was saying earlier, that there's the summary of the summary where you start getting the separate issues that could be combined into a higher level layer. So, I mean, it's in more than one of our groups, so it actually needs to be pulled together at that higher level, perhaps. So after the subgroups do it, you could maybe see how you can combine some of the efforts into
some overall statements
broader
about
one.
land use and energy. And there's some sort of the big buckets, if you will. Yeah.
And maybe it comes down to, we have an overlap between two groups for this particular thing, and we could just periodically, as necessary, hold brief meetings where we say, you take this one, we'll take this one, Because, for example, when I think about some of the housing things, I think I feel like you're going to get into a lot of PUD kinds of things, and I don't really understand enough about planning to get into some of these bonus systems that I read about. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't feel like I have enough expertise with that kind of thing, and
that's really ordinance things. Yeah.
I mean, I can learn about electrification, the chargers, and I can learn about bike parking, but once it starts getting into where you're bargaining with developers about, if you give us this, that's
yeah. Jane's busy looking at something. Or are you doing? Okay, so we've kind of decided on a basic format and 4 columns, 2 of which will, one will be the timetable, one will be are we putting leadership and collaborators together under in the second column?
Yeah.
You're muted.
Yeah, I think for this initial one, let's keep it simple.
Okay. Got it. Right. Then let me go. Pardon me. I used my agenda piece here. Come here. Okay, then article for the winter newsletter. What are content? Thoughts on that?
What are we ready to tell people?
And when is the deadline to come up with it?
December 5th.
I think with such a short deadline, you maybe, as you suggested, link them to the presentation if they'd like. Say, we are busily working on this, hope to get it out by whenever, at least a rough draft, at least the draft. In the meantime, if you have any input, please contact whatever,
Okay. And then I think the other thing that they wanted to highlight was the lighting work that was done. Which is work. Okay. That makes it simple. And then at the same time, we can update the website with some of that information. Right. Anybody have anything else that they wanted to talk about? Any other little insights or updates? Okay, then Pam, you wanted to say something, and Rob, we'll open it up to you guys.
I do. Let me stop so I'm not walking and chewing gum at the same time. Good evening, Pam Boyd, a Scio resident. I would like to encourage residents to zoom into this Saturday's Board of Trustees working session, where they will be they will be having a discussion, as I understand it, the various responsibilities of each trustee. The description of this meeting says, quote, to hold a working session to hear and discuss Trustee Brazeau's presentation, end quote. But for the last few meetings, he has talked about putting together a working session to discuss an organization chart to assign what each trustee is responsible for. This meeting is scheduled in Township Hall and on Zoom Saturday, December 3rd at 11 a.m. Thank you.
Thank you. Rob, did you have anything you wanted to add? I see that you unmuted yourself, but we can't hear anything. Still not working. You want to put it in chat? Something busted. Okay. Oh dear. Maybe it's too many meetings. We have overload. Okay, so are folks okay with continuing to meet? I haven't set up meetings yet for January or next year. Are folks going to be around that first week in January if we did the Thursday? That would be the 5th.
I'll be
Are
available.
folks around, or do we need to in January pick something like the 12th?
I'm pretty open the whole month.
Kathy, you're good? Okay.
I'm good.
All right.
Good for me.
Everybody.
Gosh, that was
Everybody's
easy.
home for Christmas. No. All right, then I will go ahead and we will continue. Okay. Oh, all right. I think, yeah, Anna, that's, yeah, I know that's your first start, but yeah, I'm thinking, now I feel like the critical work we're going to be doing, to get this framework done really needs to be done by the beginning of February. So I think, January is going to be, I can see the transportation group leading the way, and buildings and infrastructure will be their waste. These three are the core groups that have really been most active. I have to work a little bit more with the natural ecosystems to get them into this framework. They have an ocean of ideas and so forth. So that's going to be tough to condense. But I think if we look at, kind of a progress report, that's another reason maybe to do the second week, because everybody probably can get one meeting in between now and then. But I don't know. Would you rather have your own working section that week and meet later?
Right. If we can I just sent a very first rough draft of the template to you and to Kathy so we can iterate it.
Okay, great.
And I guess my suggestion would be, let's get this template put together, keep it simple, get it out to the 4 or 5 working groups with really clear directions, ask them to come together the first 2 weeks of January to sort of reorient their material. And I would encourage us to come together. Isn't our regular meeting? Oh, it is the first Thursday.
Yeah.
Have the groups use that time slot for their work, and maybe we just come together later in the month.
Yeah, maybe why don't we have everyone, do their own meeting, anytime that first week in January, and maybe we come together on the 12th. And then that gives everybody another couple weeks before we come together the first week in February. Does that make sense? And that'll encourage some rapid work.
Yeah.
Good plan.
I happen to have a meeting on the 12th, but that's,
oh, you do?
That's neither here nor there.
Okay.
I would go with the 12th. I think that's decent timing.
Okay. All right.
I'm fine with that.
All right, we'll encourage everyone else to get in, and we can kind of share our drafts and so forth, share our progress on the 12th, and then hopefully share some pretty final stuff on in the beginning of February, and that gives us time to, we can take even some of the initial stuff and meet with some leadership, and if there's any tweaking that they feel we need, we can accommodate that then before we're done. Okay, makes a lot of sense. Okay, last thing we need to do are approve our minutes. Thanks again, Kathy. Okay,
I move to approve.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
This is support by Jeff. All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, so I will, we'll start then on the 12th, and then the first Thursday, and we'll probably, I'll have us meeting through June. I'll do the first half of the year, because one of the things we're also talking about is maybe doing some sort of event, depending if we have season turns or not. So that would at least get us to the summer. Sound good?
Sounds great.
You guys are still in?
Mhm.
This is the hardcore we got tonight. I'll tell you that. And there are a few people that are still traveling too. So great. Look forward to it. And you guys have a good holiday, and look for your template, and we're moving on.
See y'all soon.
Good holiday, everybody.
Yes.
Thanks,
thank
Jen.
you. Yeah. Good luck with finals.
Mhm.
Recording stopped.
Thanks.
You bet. You as well. And thanks for
Thank you.
all of the work that you guys have been doing, and pushing the township. Take care. Bye-bye.